information on the UFOs over Ukraine. Okay, this is a really interesting story. Just the whole idea of UFOs over the active war zone in the Ukraine. So let's get into it just a little bit. This is Cosmic Road, where I discuss UFOs and the paranormal. Please hit like, please subscribe, share on social media, and as I'm going through this, please comment below and let me know what you think. Okay, this is the second the second segment I'm going to do, talking about the interview that Ross Coulthart gave, and that I discussed yesterday. And, really good interview. And I felt like there was a couple of things from that interview that I wanted to discuss in separate videos. And right now he is talking about the UFOs over the war zone. And he discusses that at a couple of different points in the interview. And so I will share what he says at both times. He doesn't go into the phenomenon very, very much at either point, but he does have some interesting things to say in each occasion. So, at first he's talking about a specific incident where somebody he interviewed actually saw a UFO over Ukraine. And it was a very weird UFO that came out of some orbs. So, very interesting. And so without further ado, here is what Ross had to say about that.
But with every step forward, there's two steps backward, because at the moment there's this troll factory. I suspect a lot of it's disinformation, deliberate disinformation. But there's this troll factory of infantile, puerile trolls who basically seek to pull down anybody that comes forward with new information. I'll give you an example. I mean, I've just this morning been dealing with follow-up emails, many of them very informative, about a story I ran on Need to Know, the podcast I do with Bryce Zabel, where we featured an interview with a British soldier called John Chaplin. He's a British Army veteran, highly decorated, well-respected guy in his own unit. I've checked him out thoroughly. He is who he says he is. He's shared his service record with me. And he testified to us in the vodcast podcast that we do that during a battle, while they were under fire in Ukraine on the banks of the Irpin River in Kiev, they were basically witness, him and 7 other colleagues, to a craft of some kind that emerged from 3 amber orbs in the sky at about 1,000 feet. Now, I don't mind scientific response and analysis. I welcome it. I welcome skepticism, and I'm sure we will. We'll get a skeptical rejoinder at some stage, I'm sure, from many people. But the puerile, infantile, teenage jock side of UFO Twitter would seek to denigrate a serviceman by calling him or slurring him as a mercenary when he's actually a signed up member of the Ukrainian armed forces. The way in which people's motives are attacked, and anybody basically pushing something that gives the trolls an opportunity to get an edge. I can understand why, and I read recently that one preeminent researcher is withdrawing from the field because they're just sick of the trolls. Right. Now, that's not scientific criticism. It's not good analysis. One person had a swipe at John the soldier because he didn't film during the battle. And what that told me, of course, was that they hadn't actually watched or listened to the podcast at all, because in the podcast, he explains they were under fire during the period that they were in the sighting area. They couldn't possibly pull out a shiny camera with lights on it and direct it at an object in the sky, because they would have been shot.
Interesting, right? You got UFO coming out of orbs. And of course, Ross also talks about how people are expecting too much of the guy that actually saw this, that they thought he was going to get out a camera and film it during while being shot at. So, that's obviously an unreasonable expectation. And that was his main point in sharing this story. But I wanted to share that story because it's a freaking UFO coming out of orbs. That's interesting. Sometimes you get orbs coming out of UFOs, but in this case you have a UFO coming out of orbs. I think I have come across that once or twice, but it's kind of rare. So what does that mean? What does that imply? If orbs come out of UFOs, that suggests the UFO is acting as more of a mothership, releasing these smaller ships or whatever. But if the orbs are unleashing the UFO, are the orbs creating a portal? Are the orbs possibly the only thing that is visible of the UFO until it decloaks itself? I don't know, but that's fascinating. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Okay, let's get into the other point that Ross brings up. He's specifically talking about Avi Loeb, because Avi Loeb wrote a paper basically debunking the UFOs over Ukraine.
Avi Loeb was basically talking about the way these objects moved. If it was as the Ukrainian scientists described, it couldn't possibly conform to known, terrestrial physics. Therefore, it's not real. But I think one of the things that I find interesting is when I talk to other scientists, they're saying, yes, but quantum science admits the possibility of explanations that are not within known Newtonian physics. Yeah. And so I think what perhaps needs to happen in mainstream science is there needs to begin to be the acknowledgement that whatever this phenomenon is, it's displaying capacities that can't be explained with Newtonian physics. Yeah. And that as we move into the quantum world, we're talking about the possibilities of an Alcubierre drive, which allows distortions of space-time to move at extraordinary speeds and distances and across time, across the universe. It's only a theoretical possibility at the moment, but perhaps this explains this phenomenon. And I guess one of the things that really surprised me was in as eminent a professor as Avi Loeb's analysis. And I see, now that I understand his Galileo project, he probably quite rightly constrains himself to what he believes he knows from accepted modern Newtonian physics. But the issue is we have to start opening our minds scientifically to the possibility that the explanation lies outside known human science.
Avi, like I have mentioned before, is a very nuts and bolts guy and kind of a skeptic to a certain degree. Then he was really making an effort to saying, well, these things that have been reported, they're behaving anomalously and impossibly, and therefore it couldn't have happened. So it must have been some mundane explanation like, missiles or something. So, it couldn't have happened, so it didn't happen, was Avi's, explanation, which is, I hate to say that Avi is being silly or pig-headed, but he's being a little silly and a little pig-headed. But, again, I think that is an asset in a way. I think that when Avi releases his findings on the phenomenon, that he's going to be taken more seriously because of his extreme scientific rigor. So I think that it's good that he's skeptical and scientific, to a point. So what are UFOs/UAPs doing over Ukraine? What's the deal? Instead of debating whether or not they're there, I would really like to discuss what they're doing and figure out what they're doing. That's kind of what annoys me about the skeptics, is I think they're holding us back from actually examining the phenomenon and dealing with it. With all due respects to Avi Loeb and people that are a little bit more skeptical and requiring evidence, I'm way past that. I don't need the evidence. I've seen an overwhelming amount of evidence. Let me rephrase that. I have seen overwhelming evidence. I don't need it to be proven to me yet again that it exists. I want to know what it's doing and how we should be interacting with it and how it can further our development as a species, and we're dealing with something very serious and very powerful that is interacting with us in a very profound way. seemingly, to judge by the number of alien abductions. The Roper poll in the 90s suggests that 2% of people in the worldwide are being abducted, and David Jacobs has said they had to slash, just randomly cut a whole bunch of people to get it down to 2%, because it was actually much higher than that. It was actually closer than to 5%. So if that's true, that's just a massive amount of people that are being directly affected by the phenomenon. So we need to know what the deal is. So, with all due respect to the skeptics, I'm way past all of that. I want to move the conversation and our interaction with the phenomenon a little forward. So why are there UFOs over Ukraine? I have no idea clearly, but there is an historic precedence for this going back at least to World War II and the Foo Fighters that were seen in the aerial battles of World War II. Both sides thought that it was the other side with these mysterious craft or whatever they were, these orb-like objects. But at the end of the war, when the U.S. went through Germany's files, there was nothing like that. It wasn't the Germans, and the Germans thought it was the U.S. And if we thought it was the Germans, it probably wasn't us. At least nothing. It wasn't a conventional ship. It wasn't the mainstream government doing it. It could have been some sort of secret faction, some sort of early breakaway group kind of thing. But if so, why would they have made themselves known to the aerial fighters in World War II without actually doing anything? If they were, war vessels of some kind, they would be attacking the Germans, one would think. If they were simply observers, they probably wouldn't have made themselves known. So it wasn't us as far as I'm concerned. It wasn't humans as far as I'm concerned. It was something else, someone else doing that. And it could be that same power or some similar power or entity that is in the Ukraine, again, not seemingly doing anything. The Astronomical Society in Ukraine reported seeing squadrons of these UFOs over the war zone. They said there were different types. There was the phantoms and the cosmics, and sometimes they appeared singly. Sometimes they were in squadrons. So if they were, military drones, for example, they would be doing something. They would be seen shooting at their enemy, whichever side that was, or doing something. They would be there for some reason. So, but these weren't. They seemed to be observing, or who knows what they're doing. Possibly the same thing the Foo Fighters were doing. Could that simply be the phenomenon making itself known to the combatants and to the victims of the war, saying, hey, somebody is watching this, be careful, don't go too far? Could that be the message behind what's going on? And if that's true, is that supposed to be some sort of warning, or possibly they're consoling us in the event that things get a little more heated, or a lot more heated? Maybe they're saying there is an adult in the room, and watch out. Because I have heard some alien abductees will report that the beings will have communicated to them that if there is ever a nuclear war, they will step in, the beings will step in and take over, the custody of the planet from humanity. So if we ever get out of line, the adults will step into the room and take over, and we will no longer necessarily be in charge of our own destiny. So that is something that is out there. That is what multiple alien abductees have reported. I take everything that the being say with a grain of salt, because sometimes they do come out with different narratives. But I think that is definitely worth noting and could possibly be an explanation for what we're seeing. But what do you think? Let me know in the comments below. If you've enjoyed this video, please give it a big thumbs up. I would really appreciate it. That would be super awesome. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button and the bell to be notified of future videos. There's social media links below. Please follow me on Facebook and Twitter. That would be super cool. And there's a PayPal button if you wanted to support the channel. I would love that. That would be groovy. So until next time, Cosmic Road out.